right, the next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about linear cost, revenue, and profit functions. So the first thing I'm going to do is just define a function c of x. Okay, this is the name of the function, c of x. X is the input. And I'm going to define that to be the total cost of manufacturing x units. Okay, so we're manufacturing something. We're just calling them units. You know, it could be alarm clocks, or it could be television sets, or it could be widgets, or whatever we're producing. We're going to produce X of those. All right. So this is the total cost of producing X units. We're going to define another function, R of X, to be the total revenue from the sale of X units. So we're just naming our function R for revenue. And then finally, how about another function, P of X, P for profit. We're going to define P of X to be the profit, the total profit from selling X units. And as you might expect, we can basically subtract the cost from the revenue to get our profit, right? So, you know, we're making widgets and they cost so much to produce, and they bring in, you know, a certain amount of dollars, and then the difference between the revenue and the cost is your profit. All right, so it's just a little vocabulary here that you need to know. There are different kinds of costs associated with manufacturing a profit. There are some costs that are just constant. They're constant regardless of, you know, how many units you produce, right? So, you know, you have to keep the lights on. You have to pay your human resources people. You have, you know, there's just certain fixed costs that you have regardless of how many units you sell, and those are called fixed costs. Fixed costs. So, and then you also have variable costs. So you have costs that vary with the number of units produced. So these costs vary, and they're called variable costs. Variable costs. Okay, so you get these two kinds of costs. So fixed costs are just in dollars. Your variable costs, though, the units would be dollars per unit, right? They would, because they vary with the number of units that you're producing, whereas your fixed costs are just in dollars. All right. So things like, you know, you got to pay people for a certain amount of hours. You got to buy raw materials, and those might vary with the number of units you produce. All right, so let's take a look at example 2 now. Here we have Puritan, a manufacturer of water filters, has a monthly fixed cost of $20,000. That's our fixed cost. So that's going to happen. We're going to incur this cost of $20,000 whether we sell anything or not. Okay, just got to keep the lights on. And our production cost is $20 per unit. Okay, so see, the units are dollars per unit, so that's our variable cost. Even though it doesn't say variable cost, that's the variable cost because the units are in dollars per unit. Now, the selling price is $30 per unit. Okay, so that's going to contribute to our revenue. And then we're supposed to find the cost function, the revenue function, and the profit function for Puritan. Okay, well, since we were given the costs first, let's go ahead and calculate the costs. Right, so we have this fixed cost of $20,000, right? And then for every unit that we produce, it costs another $20 per unit. Okay, so we're going to add to that 20x, right? 20 times the number of units that we produce. So x is the number of units that we produce. Okay, and that's going to be our total cost. We have the fixed cost, and then we have the variable cost times the number of units that we produce. So that's our cost function. Our revenue function, our revenue is just how much money we're taking in. And we only make money if we sell units, right? So we sell these water filters, and we make, each one brings in $30. So 30 times the number of units will give us a total revenue that we're bringing in from selling these water filters. So then our profit is just the difference between those two. We take our revenue, 30x, and subtract the cost, right? So I'm going to subtract now. Maybe okay. So I'm, but I have to subtract the whole cost. So I have to put parentheses around it. So 20,000 plus 20x. I'm going to subtract all of that. So make sure you put parentheses around it. All right. And then if you want to simplify it a little bit, you have to distribute. You can kind of think of this as being -1 times this. And so this is essentially equal to 30x minus 20,000. And then, I'm just have to distribute the -1, right? So minus 20x, because I'm subtracting everything in parentheses. Minus 20x. So I can simplify this a little bit just by taking 30x minus 20x gives me 10x. And then I have minus $20,000. So there's a cleaned up version of our profit function. And that's it. That's all there is for that particular example. So I will meet you in the next video for the next example.